leading a lot of Ugandans into a lot of serious number crunching. Tonight on the Fourth Estate, let me introduce Ivan Okuda, who is a journalist with the Daily Monitor. Ivan, very nice to have you.
Thank you, Charles. Good evening, Uganda.
Nicholas Sengova is a political and social commentator, writes a column for the Daily Monitor. Very nice to have you.
Thank you very much.
And of course,
Good evening to our viewers.
the old man, Onapito Ekomolite, the Corporate Affairs Director, Library, S.B. Miller. Very nice to have you.
At this moment, there's only one old man with a hat. He's the one who matters in the country. So I pretend that's age.
Let me start with this whole headache of the number crunching. And I want to start with you, Nicholas. You've been calculating and recalculating the numbers. Now on the side of the percentages. The election is done with. Last week we said when we come back here this Sunday, we'll be discussing after the election and whether we have a new face or an old face, but anyway, would have a new president coming in, whichever way. So President Museveni was declared yesterday. The numbers, you had some concerns about the percentages.
No, I was just wondering. In fact, before I came here, I had a chat with one of the people who has been running polls. When you add the totals of the figures that we have been given as the final tally by the Electoral Commission, it actually gives you 100%. But that 100% does not include is it the invalid votes or spoiled votes?
The invalid ones.
It's something that has really intrigued me. I don't know how that science of tallying votes goes about those sort of things. You know?
Ona, let me put this to you. If you look at these percentages,
Oh, please.
Abed Bwanika 0.93%, Mbabazi 1.43%, Venantius Variamreva 0.55%, Benon Buta Viraro 0.27%, Besije Chiza Chfefe 35.37%, Joseph Elton Mabirizi 0.26%, Maureen Chalia Walube 0.44%, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni 60.75%. By the calculation of Nicholas Sengova, this comes to 100%.
Why are you putting Nicholas on the spot? There's an electoral commission which came up with these numbers.
This totals to 100%, but invalid votes are part of the number of votes that are counted. So they should be part of this.
Look, Charles, someone will say, so what? I mean, Charles, let's not really go to the small numbers. I think the only big numbers which matter here is the number 60 point something and 35 point something. But even more importantly, I think there are other numbers which tell the story. I think that's number of the people who voted for the winner versus the registered voters. They are, for example, under 40%. So again, that is a number which you can argue about, that is the winner gets the majority. The people who have voted but have not voted for the winner are also significant. But above all, the people who have voted for the winner are the majority. So to me, all those other small numbers are really a question of splitting atoms, so to say. I think the bigger question is out there. The results are out. What are the implications?
Okay, we'll come to the implications in a moment. We'll come to the implications in a moment. Numbers are important. Ivan, what do you make of the numbers, the calculation by percentage? Of course, there is that over 1,000 polling stations whose votes are not included in the total that has been given by the Electoral Commission so far. I have seen all sorts of calculations from all sorts of people saying out there are possibly 1,050,000 votes of people who went out and voted and are not included in the tally of the Electoral Commission. Any issues that will arise because of these numbers?
Any issue that arises essentially feeds into my appreciation of the context in which, first of all, we're having this conversation. We're having this conversation in the context where our democracy is yet again in the dock. It's on trial. You're having this conversation in the context of an election held where the Chairman of the Electoral Commission essentially announces the results under duress, constructive duress, where results of a presidential election announced while one of the candidates is under house arrest and remains under house arrest,
And the other candidate actually was also under some kind of siege.
As at Amamamba was his home on Friday. And 3 police trucks and 1 military police truck there doing checks on whoever is accessing his home. You're discussing this in that context, and in the context of an election that has been held under fairly controversial circumstances right from the very start, with confidence in the Electoral Commission really at its lowest. So the numbers is a discussion we can have, but bearing that in mind.
We're asking the question, what next? Honor, let me come back to you. What next? The election is done. A winner has been declared. What next?
Look, I think first of all, before we go to what next, I mean, we had been here arguing about the outcome. Some of us sort of indicated that it was a foregone conclusion because of a lot of factors. One, President Museveni enjoyed enormous power of incumbency, and also he utilized, I think he put in a lot of effort in securing this victory. Through carrot, through stick, whatever you want to describe it as, but he really put an effort.
And pepper
so
spray.
it was not a surprise. But I said earlier that he would be the last person to assume that this is what they call a ringing endorsement of himself. Because as I said, under 40% of all voters registered, voted or endorsed him. And then of course those who voted also 4 in 10 were not endorsing him. So he has some homework to do. And I think especially in terms of the succession question, which is now the immediate question. He was asked today at the press conference, and he was, as usual, being smart enough to say we shall follow the Constitution. Of course, he knows well that the Constitution can be changed and has been changed. So it means if he's going to succeed himself, that's by changing the Constitution, removing the age limit. This result gives him a bit of small headache in the sense that he would need a sweeping legitimacy and sweeping debate with him.
He complained. He said the Electoral Commission must have rigged him. Because,
yeah, so we'll have a bit of issue, but I know he'll get his way. But I think if he decides in the unlikely scenario that he's handing over, his power to choose a successor will also be a bit dented by this. Because he had talked during the campaign that he expected 80%, and then I think the NRM handlers talked of 70-something.
75%.
So I think this was not a very comfortable win for the president, but nonetheless it's a win, and of course it gives him more challenge for the next 5 years. And look, I hope we shall have time to discuss whether we need another election if he's a contender.
Okay, let's come into that. But looking at whether this gives him a comfortable leverage, because some people have been talking about legacy building in these 5 years, assuming he follows the Constitution as it is. Of course, that is under question, as Ona puts it. If you look in terms of raw numbers, I love numbers. Raw numbers, President Museveni between 2011 and 2016, in spite of a phenomenal growth in terms of voters and the voters register, his numbers have grown by only 189,134 of declared votes. From 2011's 5,428,369 to today's 5,617,503. In spite of all that phenomenal investment in terms of money, in terms of time, in terms of hunting for the vote, where does this put the winner? Is this a win that can be celebrated, Nicholas?
Well, we should look at the past 2-3 days, what has happened in most towns. I thought that after this win, we would see people running on the streets and dancing, but everybody just kept indoors. And so for me, even before going to those numbers, there is a bit of an issue as regards the way we conduct our elections and many of the things that surround them. It's now increasingly becoming clear that the elections that are held, especially if they are held under President Museveni, it's just some sort of ritual. We do it, and then of course the rest of us come here, we sit as analysts and start saying, you know this, but here it increased, maybe because of a peace dividend. But you can just see that everywhere in town. I looked at very many people who were dancing on the streets before the election, but when you talk to many of them, they were really not very sure that what was taking place is something that was open and would lead to something that was legitimate, genuine, and believable. You know, so when we come here and start discussing the election, as you would discuss, say, the primaries in the US, you somehow fall short, because you see, I'll give you an example of a discussion I've been having with several people with regard to how the election was conducted. In many places where I voted, where I cast my vote, the whole arrangement was so transparent, very, very transparent, and it gives you a lot of faith, you know?
In the process.
In the process. They announced the number of ballots they've come with. They show you who has got what. They even broke it down and said the number of males are this and this female. These are spoiled, and you would be clear with that. Now, I don't know why, when you get the tally sheet, you know, at the end of the day, the declaration form, sorry, at the end of the day, I don't know why the Electoral Commission in Nambole does not read from that or pick information directly from that. But what we had at Nambole was, gentlemen, sit down. Now it's the third batch. We now have another 1 million have come in. This goes so and so. This. If you gave us that breakdown, because you see, the most important thing about, there are many people who talk about rigging, and you ask them where did it take place, they will not give you an explanation. So the most important thing that the Electoral Commission should do, and all those who are interested in these processes, is to make whatever is happening as transparent and logical as possible.
Why don't they make it that way? I mean, we have the cases of Omoro now. Omoro County is the standard reference case of what can go wrong with declaration.
Yes.
Yes. Where Jacob Bolanya was declared, and the returning officer said, I declare you. And people asking, what is the rationale for this declaration? What numbers are you talking about? Which was actually almost the same thing. But the Electoral Commission on the second night tried to read the details of the numbers. From this district, Museveni got this, Besigye got this, Chalia got this,
yeah,
and
but
these are the percentages.
that is still not good enough. If we could get a particular place where they list, you know, per polling station, so that a person, because you see, very many people, I noticed that very many people were so interested. They had their little papers and they would write down to take details. So if we have a particular place, whether it's a website or what, and they show, say, Namuongo, you know, the way our polling stations are named, Namuongo Kasasiro, A2, K, you know, so-and-so got this, so-and-so, you can verify as an individual from different places. That gives the process credibility. But this sort of, maybe now we have another 2 million have come in, so-and-so has got this, so-and-so has got this. That's a very, very big problem.
Ivan.
Yes.
Dr. Kizza Besigye duped the police that was guarding him this morning, today, and through one of his staff, of his workers, and said he had escaped from home and they didn't know where he was. As the moment they moved away, he was able to allow in journalists and address a press conference, almost at the same time as Yoweri Museveni was addressing his own press conference. He announced at that press conference that he'll be going to the Electoral Commission in a few hours from now to get the details of how he performed to determine his next steps. Do you think what Nicholas is talking about actually helps whatever plans he has? Why can't he just send his lawyers to pick the...
I think firstly that essentially is also a bit of an indictment on the opposition, that as of yesterday there was an attempt to attain declaration of results forms, and FDC had hit a maximum of just about 6,000 out of 28,010 polling stations. So I think that speaks to the limitation they have in terms of organizational infrastructure that can spread to the 28,010 polling stations to be able to claim that the election has been rigged, and this is our evidence in terms of results on as reflected from the declaration forms that they have. Because hours after the Electoral Commission has announced its results, the FDC had just gotten about 6,000. Raila Odinga, for example, challenged the election of Uhuru Kenyatta, and he had declaration forms from almost every single polling station. So I think that speaks to the opposition's own organizational limitations.
Absolute organizational limitation. Look, for example, I think when Kisabisi was talking about P10 defending the votes, it was not about just defending the votes at the polling station, at tally center. It was about defending the outcome. But I'm sorry to say that, and I think in his press conference was almost desperately appealing to P10 across the country to show their heads. But typical Ugandans, I'm sorry to say, they always abandon it out of need. And you can see that there hasn't been that. I think he expected that with this kind of outcome, P10 was going to erupt in their numbers. And certainly if those numbers erupted, I don't think the police...
Erupt and do what?
I mean, challenge and say this is unacceptable.
I thought the first thing that what Okuda was talking about is you pick all your results and put them together. To cut FDC some slack, when they were trying to do that, the police raided their party headquarters.
But that's what I'm saying.
Yes.
The police can only raid the headquarters because there are small numbers involved. If all those huge numbers in the rallies arose across the country, which police can meet them?
But you know they put roadblocks before the the first day of
elections. The concept was to say, we know what to expect and we shall react.
Okay. The Citizens Election Observers Network, Uganda Sion, did an analysis of the coverage of polling agents for the top 3 presidential candidates. As of 1 p.m. on polling day, Amama Mbabazi had covered just about 39% of all the polling stations in the country. Besigye had 79% coverage. Yoweri Kaguta Museveni had 95% coverage. And they did another analysis on polling agents who actually signed on the declaration forms. Museveni had 98%, Besigye managed to strike 95%, Mbabazi was just at about 45%. So I think that is telling in terms of how the concept of vote protection actually works.
Let me tell you a story.
What's standing in the way?
Let me tell you a small story about about vote protection, P10, and so on. You know, when the day we had the election, suddenly an announcement came out that there was, for security reasons, they had blocked social media, but most important of all, mobile money, you know? Now, I have heard in certain circles that some of the candidates' agents were constrained financially, you know? And then, of course, talk was doing the round, you know, guerrilla style, you know. For instance, if you're in Fort Portal, someone comes and says, but the people in Movende have been paid, what are you doing? So it shakes the confidence, you know. it shakes the confidence of, it shakes your confidence and you think maybe the party has taken you for a ride or, you know. So that was a very, very, whoever...
You'd call that a master stroke?
No, I'm not saying it was done deliberately, but the circumstances have led...
the blockade, the blocking of social media site and messaging applications and mobile money particularly. I'm talking
about mobile money. One of the consequences is that the agent in if money was the interface between the agent in the field and the party, it broke down.
Okay. And so 500 million shillings stuck in the mobile money network as a result of that blockage. That 500 million shillings was meant to be delivered to the polling agents. At Amama Mbabazi's home on Friday, there were about 15 polling agents who had their appointment letters and were claiming they did not have even a shilling from what they were promised. They had been promised 100,000 shillings from what they claimed, and Mbabazi was able to calm them down and ask them to refer to the secretariat. So I think the mobile money blockade really did.
Taking the decision.
So before you talk about organization, you must know that you must know organization. You must know the environment, in which these parties were operating.
How many people are going to have honor who are going to tell us mobile money really sabotaged them, especially the parliamentary candidates?
Yeah, a lot of them are going to blame mobile money. So
they couldn't have the money.
One need to have been smarter to to know that these things could happen, and they should have had a contingency plan.
And yet in this environment in which we operate, there are people who are known for carrying money in sacks, you know, with all these bags and what. Theirs is about, you know, it moves in sacks.
But you know that in the environment we operate in, you also can't release money days before the actual event. People will eat it and fail to go.
Precisely.
So you need to send it at the last minute.
On the last minute. So, and then you
get sabotaged at the last minute. But gentlemen, tomorrow, Kizza Besigye has promised to go to the Electoral Commission to demand for his details of how he performed to determine his next steps. If you follow the legal path, he has 10 days from the time of declaration. 10 days started counting yesterday at 4 when the declaration was done to file a petition. Do you think he'll be going through a petition process?
I don't think he'll get out of his home, not in the current environment. Certainly, I think the state is still watching. They think he's up to something. They don't trust that he can pass through Kalere without his supporters erupting in a convoy. So he won't have a chance to get out of his home.
So what's Besigye's fate over the next 10 days, the next 3 months, and the next 5 years?
Well, I would again go back to what I was saying earlier, that I think he always maintained that the people, it was not about him. It was about the people. He said this election is not about leadership for myself, it's about you. So he's really counting on his supporters out to challenge the blockade against him. And if they don't, then I would even not advise him to go ahead and fight a lone battle. But of course, I mean, to me, I have a bigger issue really with him and others. They knew this was coming, and he almost said that they did not expect any outcome other than this. So they should have really had proper contingency plans to counter an outcome they already knew was coming.
Besigye believes that unlike previous elections, and very many people are out there, if you read the reports of the observers, especially the international observers, the United States government has come up with a much stronger statement. The European Union observers, the Commonwealth observers. For once, since Besigye started participating in these elections, he has a more valid claim that his election was stolen this time around more than any other time before. Do you think that helps him mobilize, galvanize?
The president dismissed all those observers. They can't advise Uganda what to do. I mean, and I'm sure he really doesn't care about what they say. Look, I think the issue here is, as the president said, the state is solid and will protect the peace. So those are his words. I think Besigye's goose is really cooked, so to say. It's hard to swallow this, but I mean,
with these numbers of supporters,
the odds are so stacked against him. I mean, look, first of all, he doesn't want to go to court. He has said before. So even if he got the record, so what? I mean, I don't really see. Now he's calling for an international inquiry. I mean, unfortunately, the international community is also so hypocritical. It just pays a new cycle of 24 hours. Things change, they move on. So Uganda's story is going to disappear.
Last night I was listening.
Would you advise him to go to court?
Last night I was watching, before I answer that, I was watching Al Jazeera, and you had this historian and political writer, Richard Dowden. He has written several books on Africa and Uganda. Now, what he said is that Yoweri Museveni actually holds almost the international community at some kind of ransom. He has his soldiers in Central African Republic, Somalia, you know. So these people don't have to put boots and blood and lose blood, you know, in many of these conflicts in which they directly have an interest. So as long as he has that, then he can be assured of this so-called international community flip-flopping, and you know they're very capricious people. They will come and talk, you know, big, but life is going to go back to normal within, you know. Then they will start calling on the opposition to accept, and you know. So that for me, when you talk of the international community, I think Yoweri Museveni still has, you know, some clout on that side.
In fact, you must note that all foreign analysis by media, they always said Yoweri Museveni was expected to win.
Precisely.
Yeah, but that was before the election and
Look, even
whatever happened on
That language changed yesterday.
Yes,
that language
I think that language has
changed
changed.
that the election is disputed, but not that he did not win.
But
Yeah, and one of the things I had
you have
in
something
some of these
critical, Nick,
reports,
here.
reports was that, yes, it was a bad election, it didn't show this, and then what did they come out with? You would have expected, I would have paid more attention if they said that the winner should accommodate what the so-called losers and maybe negotiate with them, something like that. But you know, they said those who want to dispute should go through legal means, and so when they went that direction, you could see that the message.
So what would be your advice to the FDC and Dr. Kizza Besigye
Well,
over the next few days, few months, to swearing in day and post swearing in day?
my advice, and very it may not sound very good and practical, but you know, get a record from court, because it will give a picture of a good picture of maybe what took place, even if it does not overturn. But you know, it helps
That
to
would be
keep
the third time he's attempting to go through that.
Yes, but
journey.
it helps to keep the momentum, and you know, to prolong the election. It helps a lot. But you know, if he remains in the government is going to do everything to ensure that, you know, this matter is ended as soon as possible by ensuring he stays in his home, and you don't have those embarrassing scenes in court and revelations. So that's what I see. But I would encourage that, you know, keep it going. There are many things
To
that
analyze
can
this
happen.
election, how different is it, and how different do you think Besigye's reaction will be, given what happened in 2011? Because he virtually was kept under either house arrest, or in Nagalama, or in another holding cell for the last 5 years. But it's given dividends. If you look at raw numbers, I keep saying I love numbers. If you look at raw numbers, from what the Electoral Commission has declared so far, his numbers have grown by 1,205,327. Now, that does not include the numbers of a lot of his supporters in Kampala, in Wakiso, in Jinja, in Gulu, in Kasese, that were not included in
His
the final tally.
strongholds.
Yes, in his stronghold. You think, given this 3.6 million votes, he's going to keep quiet at home, and just because police is holding him there?
Maybe
3.27 rather.
With the indulgence, Charles, in a second or two, the court option, I did have a chat with Mr. Wandera Gallo and Elias Lukwago. Now, Wandera has been Besigye's lawyer in all these election petitions, 2001 and 6, and said the option of petitioning the Supreme Court is cut out for them. It's a closed avenue, essentially because, as Besigye has pointed out publicly, he does not have faith in the courts, and it will be running around in circles.
And people have been doing the calculation of the 7 Supreme Court judges,
Yes.
who is likely to fall where. Yes.
But more importantly, there was an interesting ruling that the Constitutional Court made last month. In 2009, Dr. Kizza Besigye, through Wandera Gallo, again petitioned the Constitutional Court challenging Section 59 of the Presidential Elections Act, which creates the substantiality test, that everything else can go wrong, so long as that everything going wrong does not substantially affect the outcome of the vote. So Besigye challenged that, and the petition had been gathering dust till last month. So the Constitutional Court upheld that provision. Now that dampened the avenue of going to the Supreme Court for Besigye's lawyer. So it's an option that is ruled out. But I think more importantly, to answer your question, I think this is not a discussion about Besigye, or at least it shouldn't be about Dr. Kizza Besigye. It's a question about Uganda. It's a question about our democratic journey as a country and the people of Uganda.
The quality of the election.
Yes, we need to have a conversation around elections, especially under what one of my lecturers, Dr. Abusinya Kavuma, calls Pax Musevenica. That, and the opposition needs to really get out of the pretense that you can keep trying, you can bank on Power 10, then another possibly 2021 they'll come up with another slogan. Have a sober, honest discussion and say, can we really use elections as a litmus test for the will of the people of Uganda? I think that conversation needs to be had as early as yesterday.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, all these discussions will be running around in circles.
Yeah, because when you talk of Dr. Kizza Besigye's support growing, he has actually ever hit a high of 37%. So this is not the highest he has scored.
No, in
percentage.
Yeah, in terms of percentage, 2 or 6.
In terms of raw numbers.
Yeah, but raw numbers on a larger sample, I mean in terms of the voter register, so it's not surprising. But I agree with Ivan that really, I think 35 years, of course, is not a foregone conclusion. Do you need, if the constitution is changed to remove age limit, which is almost...
Very likely.
Very, very likely. Very likely. Do you need another election to challenge President Museveni? Because one of the challenges the country is facing, in my view, is that the people who voted for President Museveni have good reasons for voting for him. And those who did not vote for him also have very good reasons. But the reasons, those who did not vote for him, their reasons were largely economic, that the government is not delivering. Those who voted for him are largely political stability, peace. The president's power to reign on the army over the decades, his power to avoid a coup, to suppress rebel groups, LRA and all this. That is really what the most, even up to this, towards the election, I would ask people in Teso, where I come from, most honorable will give that idea of stability. They didn't want the Karamojong raiding to resume and all that. So you find those are very valid reasons where President Museveni has absolute strength. But also those who did not agree with him had very valid reasons. So why has President Museveni not been able, despite his absolute good intentions, stated and otherwise, in terms of economic delivery, he has not done it to his best because of this idea of having to subject himself to an election always makes him pull back from allowing the true delivery to take place. For example, today was asked about the public administration, the size of cabinet, the number of districts. There are moments when he has said we don't need more districts. But, because,
and then he pulls back,
but when elections come, he allows more districts. I think if President Museveni were freed from electoral contest, it would actually allow government to operate the way those people who voted against him want the government to operate.
Now, let me ask Ona this question. With the kind of background you're giving, the context you're giving to this, to how Museveni runs the government and what the ideal would be, in a sentence, how would you describe the Thursday election?
Look, I think the election at the polling station where I went really looks very open and one would call free and fair. But ultimately, there were a lot of places in and around Kampala where there was big issues, and that, as they say, one frog ultimately spoiled the water. So the credibility of the election is in a big question. It's heavily questioned. But I think there was also a good effort to allow people to have their say.
Nicholas, how would you describe the Thursday events? If you can even avoid the word election, the Thursday events. Because there seems to me to be two worlds to this election. In particular areas, and especially upcountry, was a completely different affair. Kampala and Wakiso, a completely different affair. And then you have those other isolated places, Jinja, Gulu, and a few other places. How would you describe it?
Before you talk about the Thursday events, usually that it's like a wedding. There's a build-up.
Yes.
Courtship and all that, there's a build-up. So all those events should be put before you come to that conclusion.
The whole process.
How did we come up with the register? Norbert Mao is our poster boy on that one, you know. There were very many people who got confused. They didn't register for the national ID and found themselves off the voter register. Then along the way, you know, you had all these pronouncements from, say, the head of the police, the army, you know, which did not seem like they were coming from mere bystanders or or neutral observers, you know. They were, and they carry a lot of clout, and but they showed that what they were in for continuity and not change. You had, for instance, this particular election is one that where the issue of delivery of social service was quite sensitive, you know, and the opposition came up with a strategy of actually visiting hospitals or what are supposed to be hospitals, they are beams, schools and so on. And then the government said, no, 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 those are not campaigning areas, don't go there. Then the chief of defense forces comes and says, the opposition should not criticize the health sector. It has improved. So when you had that side to it, the people who manage, then of course you had the unfortunate statement from Dr. Engineer Haji Badru Chigundu, that if I had my way,
I wouldn't have nominated
that candidate, Kizza Besigye, I wouldn't have nominated him. Now this is a referee in this contest, you know. Manchester is playing Chelsea, and say if I had my way, that one
I would have recorded all of
that
you.
one wouldn't play. So that sort of, you know. So then you come to the election proper. When you have these situations, after I voted, where I voted, somewhere in Nakawa, the process was so transparent, so good. I enjoyed everything that took place on time. People were, the officials were there. Everything happened well. But then I visited places in Makindi and I found, you know, some of the boxes that were brought were open, you know, without seal.
Let me
so what I'm saying is that when you look at all these things, you can say this election may have been represented, but it fell short.
Now, let me ask: would you blame that on
what you call a free and fair process?
Would you blame that on deliberate action of the Electoral Commission, or maybe mere incompetence?
Let's use logic. Let's use logic. You have a polling station which is say in Namongo near the Daily Monitor. It is 2 o'clock. You don't have voting material there. The youth are rioting, they're blocking that, they're saying where are the material, 2 o'clock. And that is just 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
It's actually about 5 minutes.
5 minutes from, you know, from the Electoral Commission to that
5
place.
minutes on foot.
Yes, and you may say that the materials were in the warehouse in Chireka. But still on that day, no traffic jam, no. At most, we give it an hour, but 2 o'clock, there is nothing.
But what explains...
So how would you expect a rational person to put that?
Yes, how do you rationalize that? That in Nakawa, where you voted from, things run smoothly. In Namuongo, just next door, things don't run smoothly.
Yeah, because you know, there are two ways. There are many people who talk about urban areas. Now, in the urban areas, there is also another subset. There are areas where people stay, it's peaceful, it's calm, you always have electricity, security is good. Most of those areas, unlike the slums in the places in Namuongo, in Makindye, you are likely to have, you're not likely to have a vote for defiance, you know, people who feel people feel comfortable, they drink up to whatever time they want, move home, you park your car, it's safe till morning, you know, those sort of areas, you're not like, there's a feeling that those sort of areas, and even when you look at the patterns in which they vote, especially for the president, he gets a very good turn in.
Yes. So if the polling station is somewhere near Kisementi,
yes,
that side of Kololo,
yes,
materials get delivered on time because the people voting from there are a certain group of people.
Yes.
If it is across the road in Kamwocha,
let me add, those are the sort of people. Those are the sort of people who are like you. You know, you're a journalist. They will ask you, "How was the vote?" Well, where I voted it was okay. You know, you're the sort of those are sort of people who have some clout, who will
opinion
the people you run to get a comment from.
Yes, the people you run to. So those you'll get a good. But in Namongo there and those places, I moved. There's another place in Makindi. I found the commotion was...
Even Kabalagala.
In Kabalagala. And when you looked at the people there, some of them are high. So I looked and I said, my goodness. And when you looked at what they were complaining about, it was quite genuine. I saw a ballot box, a metallic one, and you know, it was gaping on the side, but it had a seal. So these people were saying, no, they have removed that, they have done what? And there was no logic in what they were saying. It was too much, the confusion. So they didn't actually vote in that station. I
think that's actually a very interesting thing, that within the same town, within the same areas, you can... it's a subject for investigation. I hope some journalists are going to pick this up and investigate it thoroughly.
Pick it up.
Which polling stations, which areas failed to get their materials or got inadequate materials, what kind of people live in those areas, and what kind of the challenges existed there.
I think
So what would be the logic for you?
What we should all not be shy to say is, especially with the benefit of information coming from the people that run certain aspects of the state, is that this was a well choreographed act There was nothing accidental. If it was incompetence, it was deliberate incompetence. Well-intentioned to deliver an outcome that was choreographed again for one of the 8 candidates. That is the bottom line of it. So whether it's Kabalagala, Namuongo, Chibuli that did not have ballot papers, as opposed to Kololo, the high-end places,
Gaba.
is again feeds into that, the choreography that was done by certain actors. So, I mean, I spoke to the spokesman of the Electoral Commission and asked him to explain why they're able to have ballot papers in Arua and not Namuongo. And his explanation was as ridiculous as it gets. He said,
what did he say?
Even in schools, children who come from far will always come
earlier.
And those from the staff quarters will always come late. As ridiculous as that, in the presence of the chairperson of the Electoral Commission. That was on Thursday. I mean, that is the level of impunity, the level of arrogance, the level of, we don't give a damn.
You see, what Okuda is saying is really at the heart of this matter. You see, people love to think that in elections across the world, right now the Americans are going through their primaries, and if you follow, as I do, you'll hear them talking about the establishment favoring candidate X, and they might even manipulate the convention and what have you. So Uganda's case is no exception. And President Museveni in particular,
looks like we're a master.
President Museveni in particular enjoys a historic position, which actually today I was following his press conference and was saying when he goes to campaign, he looks at many people in the crowd as his children and some of them as his grandchildren. And he said there were a few who are of his age.
Of my generation, yes.
And so the actors in the States are no exception in terms of how President Museveni, in fact, how they relate to him more than how they relate. Many of them see him as a father figure. I've always said this. Some even biologically, so to say. So it's always hard for people in the establishment to remove themselves completely from the dynamics of an election. They are not absolutely impartial, you know.
And it's not
and this is one of the challenges of human. It's almost a human thing. And in a society where the institutions, again, people by the individuals, are quite weak, this kind of deliberate and by omission and commission mistakes are always going to be there.
But you see, now that gives us another conversation.
Let me just ask some of our viewers to join us in this discussion. I think the number will be running at the bottom of your screen in a few minutes. And you try to call us, and when you call, keep your question or comment brief and keep it to the point, especially if you can tell us what happened in your area, why do you think it happened the way it happened, so that we can have you join into this conversation. We're looking at two things. We're looking at what next, but also need to understand the context where we're coming from. How did the election turn out the way it turned out, and what does this mean?
No, but Charles,
Yes.
you see, my brother Ona has brought in something important. That when Museveni is at this campaign rally, he looks and all these are his children. You can even add that some of them are even his conscripts, you know, people who feel, you know, that if they do their calculation and he's out of the picture, they go down as well. You know, because in Uganda, now, there is hardly an institution that functions and you respect it for its independence and functions as it was envisaged by the law and the constitution. You see?
Okay, sorry to cut you. Let's pick a few callers, and then we should be able to move on after we have picked a few callers. Hello? Hello? Yes, tell us your name and where you're calling from. Keep your question or comment brief.
Yes, I'm called Chris.
Yes, Chris.
And I'm calling from Ruwaga.
Yes, please.
I'm very, very disappointed by the way Mr. Onapito is analyzing issues.
Yes, please.
These issues should not be trivialized. Trying to make things neutral by way of benefiting, I think, one of the 8 presidential candidates. My point is, this election has indeed been a sham. I like those 2 other gentlemen. They are bringing out issues and calling them by their name.
Ivan and Nicholas.
Ivan and Nicholas.
Yes.
I'm very, very proud of them, and I think those are the people we need. Honorable Napito, come out clear. Is he in or against? Let him not be a mediocre. We want his point of view. Now, secondly, I'm requesting that the Forum for Democratic Change should compile facts. Let them not go to court, because we already know what to expect from court. But let these facts be published, maybe in the Daily Monitor.
Yes.
Because I know the news region won't publish them. Let them be published, and the Ugandans get to know that this is what took place, and they leave it at that.
Thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you.
Let's open the line to some other caller. Hello? Hello?
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening. Your name and where you're calling from?
My name is Peter Opata. I'm calling from Seta.
Yes, Peter.
Rather also very disappointed with how Napito has looked at some of these things. Because clearly everybody who has participated in this election had his expectation. I drove from Toronto yesterday.
Yes.
Seta. And the entire journey, looking, there was people in the scenery. Because clearly, Ugandans had expectations, and the outcome of this election does not represent the expectations.
The will of the people.
You cannot be so popular to have garnered such majority vote, and nobody celebrates your victory.
Thank you, Peter, for that. We'll discuss that. Can you win and have no people celebrating your victory? Where does that happen? Let's pick another call on the line. Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes, is it NTV?
Yes, it is. Are you watching the show?
Yes, please. How are you?
Good, good. How are you doing? What's your name and where are you calling from?
I'm Henry calling from Kampala.
Yes, Henry. Your comment about the elections.
Henry calling from Kampala. First of all, I want to commend the Electoral Commission. I want to commend the Electoral Commission for doing a very good job. Actually, my observation, this election was too much free and fair. Biometric voter registration. I didn't see any sort of like forgery anywhere. I think the whole election should be commendable for being too much free and fair. So the result should be accepted wholeheartedly.
You said too much free and fair.
Yes.
Okay, and okay, thank you.
Overboard.
Thank you. Hello, let's pick another caller. Hello? Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Yes, your name and where you're calling from? I think we lost that one. Do we have another caller? Hello?
Oh,
Yes, sir.
I'm Mangusha. How are you?
Good, good. How are you doing?
I'm okay.
Your name and where you're calling from?
I'm called Wamanga from Longo.
Wamanga, yes?
Now, my problem is my brother Onabi. So, on him.
Let's listen to him. Yes, what is your problem with Onapito?
Onapito lost his head when he became press secretary. And then, given that the government controls private sector, he still believes that he cannot think with his head. How do love think like he used to think when he was working with the monitor? The situation here is dire. And you people recognize that when somebody was speaking, this man next to Onapito, when he was speaking, at one time the way it went on, he was making some statement about the Electoral Commission.
Yes.
And the wave went off completely. He was not heard, he wasn't there.
Really? I don't think we realized
I'm
that.
telling you because I'm watching.
Yes, we'll ask our technical people to check what went
So
wrong.
maybe technical may not be. So like, we are suspicious. Absolutely.
Okay.
So please, situations may be different, but let's think. We must think for this country, and nobody has a right to take this country for a ride.
Thank you.
People have their head over their shoulders, let them think and it's straight. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's just pick one caller and then we'll come back to the studio and finalize this discussion. Yes. Hello?
Hello.
Yes. Your name and where you're calling from? Can the technical people try to make sure that that lady comes through, because it's the only lady calling into the show. Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Hello?
Hello?
Yes, your name and where you're calling from. Let me encourage the lady who had just called to try and call again. We'll make an exception and let you through. Yes,
Hello?
sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, my name is Alan.
Yes, Alan.
I would like to know why these people are not complaining about the MPs who have come in big numbers vis-a-vis the opposition. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, we'll discuss that in a moment. We'll ask our people in production to help us. When the lady calls back, kindly let her through, give her an exception. Gentlemen, let me start with Honor. People are wondering which world you live in.
Charles, I know elections are a very emotive issue, and I absolutely understand when people are fired up.
Do we have the lady back?
But one of the advantages I have is
just a moment. Just a moment. We have the lady. Yes.
Hello.
Yes, please.
Good evening.
We can hear you. Your name and where you're calling from?
I'm Dora.
Yes, Dora.
Where I stay in Luwafu,
Yes, please.
and I voted from Naguru.
Yes, please.
Okay, I'm just going to tell you something. Okay, I left home at around 8:30 and headed for Naguru. I reached there at around, like 9:30 there. I joined the line. I did the voting, but what I realized at my polling station, we did not have the biometric machine was there, but we were not using it, we were just using the register. So we voted at around 11. I was already leaving the place and heading back to my home, and I used Lama Road. So at around 12:30, I was passing by Salama Road heading home. So I found this polling station, and they were just receiving the
Voting materials.
Yes. And people were there lining up, they were waiting, and some were actually on the road. And people were just rowdy, they were so annoyed, I think. I'm like, okay, how can material be at Naguru and they are not yet here
At Salama Road.
at Salama Road? Yes. And even as I was going to town in the morning, there is a polling station at Molly and Paul's Primary School around there, Makindya. People were there very early in the morning. There were very long lines, and people hadn't started voting by that time. They have the material. So I don't know what really happened. Electoral Commission has a lot to tell. I had the spokesperson last time when he hosted him. He was not really giving us any explanations why material was not delivered around these nearby places.
Thank you very much, Dora. Thank you very much. Let's come back to the discussion. Let's go back to Honor.
Charles, I totally respect the views of the callers, and I think they're absolutely right. And that's what freedom is about. I have nothing to comment.
No, people are thinking that you're living in a different world.
That is my look. Of course, what I would say, I love I follow Donald Trump a lot. I love this non-political correctness. A lot of people love or want political correctness. I always love to say it the way I feel and the way I see. And I think that's the freedom we want to. But I totally agree with the sentiments, and they're absolutely correct to convey them.
Let's just finish with the comment Dora has just made, and then we'll go back to discuss the MPs as we wind up this discussion. That selective delivery of materials. Previously, we used to have something called gerrymandering. The Americans still do it. You redistrict. So you cut out certain people and leave them on the other side, and then you leave the other people on the other side. That seems to be what has happened. How do you move from wherever she was moving from, Luwafu, go to vote in Bugolobi, vote peacefully, and go back and find all those people without voting materials?
No, but that's
amazing.
That one has been answered, and I listened to Fono Pondo, the spokesman of both, I think the head of the media center
and NRM spokesperson.
Yeah.
Deputy spokesman.
Yeah, and he said he was talking about the economic advantages and disadvantages of, say, maybe the urban poor and what it says about the way they will vote. If you come and speak to these people and tell them about change and tell them that actually you're where you are because there's a problem, there's a flaw in the governance of this country, they will listen to you. So in most of these urban areas where these slummy kind of areas, you know, you're going to have that problem. The government will always be apprehensive, and yeah, because of that disadvantage, they cannot deliver water, housing. There's a very good article in today's New Vision.
You cannot effectively collect garbage from those areas.
Yes, precisely. You know, so the sanitation is so poor. Now those people are looking out for hope and something new. Now the man with the heart has been there 30 years. Now almost nothing has changed in their lives. The numbers keep piling up. So those sort of people, if there is anything that can that ensures that their vote is not heard as it's supposed to be, chances are high that it will happen.
Does that tie into the question? John Nagenda, Senior Presidential Advisor on Media and Public Relations, called them the unwashed of the slum. But how does government, President Yoweri Museveni, going into his, he's already in his 31st year in power. The vote on Thursday gave him a mandate for another 5 years that will take him 35. How does he manage, given what we saw in the last 5 years, when you have an urban center that has rejected you? Because you have all members of parliament. The NRM has been washed out of parliamentary positions in Kampala and in most urban areas. How does he fit it?
Is it just urban centers that have rejected him?
No, largely, if you look at Kampala, the woman MP, Nabila, has returned. Nakawa, Fred Ruhindi is gone, Kabaziguruka is in, FDC. Much in the west is opposition. The one of Sam Simbwa, Simbwa was much in the east.
Yes.
No, much in the west, where he's been replaced by, Ibrahim Kasozi, also of FDC. You have Kawempe.
But that's an assumption that those MPs and the role they play actually matter in the whole grand scheme of things.
Precisely.
But generally, President Museveni enters.
Doesn't it matter?
It doesn't matter in the grand in accordance with the design of the politics of the country today. President Museveni enters his new term with his legitimacy suffering. I'm reading Lee Kuan Yew's book, How He Transformed Singapore from Third World to First World. And he keeps emphasizing in almost every single chapter, you need the goodwill and the confidence of the people. And I don't think President Museveni
used to read Lee Kuan Yew from Third World, First World, the story of Singapore, like a Bible. He used to refer to it a lot, but he has since...
Essentially, yeah. So it's a struggle for him. You know, a struggle to assert his legitimacy, so that when the results were announced, in the hall at the National Tally Center in Nambole, only 4 people celebrated: Ofono Pondo, Kasule Lumumba, Lydia Wanyoto, Mike Sevalu. 4 people clapped. Everybody else was as aloof as though a death announcement has been made. That's how bad it is. The international media coverage of the whole election, as I was watching Al Jazeera today, one of the lead stories on Al Jazeera tonight is opposition leader in Uganda appeals to his supporters to protest against his arrest. The reports by the international observers and even local observers like Sion, the Commonwealth, are simply a copy and paste of the 2006, 2001, and 2011 election observation report. So what that means is...
Though in stronger terms this time around,
in stronger terms, yes. So that essentially means it's business as usual for him. Assert your legitimacy in whatever coercive shape works
is
for
it
the
sustainable?
Charles,
just a moment. Is it sustainable?
It's a question for Ugandans. It's a test on their patience. It's a test on whether they want to have, in 2005, Justice James Ogola called it rape of the temple of justice, whether they want to have this underage democracy to be continuously defiled and abused.
I've been following social media, which was shut down because of this election, and now people have found a way to bypass it, and they were saying
it's now on.
Yes, it's coming on. It's not yet fully on, actually.
It's on.
And someone was saying, someone sent a tweet and said, we've been raped, and like any other victim, all we're asking for, give us back our clothes. No, but for the absence of...
I was commenting on the defeat of the, sort of the opposition takeover of Kampala in terms of MPs. But I think the defeat of the incumbents is not limited to
the NRMs,
across the political spectrum. And I think there was a strong anti-incumbency wave.
Apart from?
Of course, that has made some people say if you are looking at the trends, it means all incumbents from top to bottom should have gone. But I guess one incumbent has a vision, so he always
has defied. One incumbent is defiant.
Defied the way.
He actually has a mission. No, but you see, there's that question of MPs.
Yes.
MPs is a very important question. Why is it that people are talking about the presidency and not? It brings us back to the other question, the other issue that I was talking about. That the way this country is structured, the economics and everything, the MP is going to go to that parliament. Whether it's FDC, DP or whatever, they will go. There are very, very few who are going to go there with that mission, you know, activism and all that. Many times they fall in place. First of all, the numbers are not that big. So they will always go with the majority. And then many of them have been known to behave like Nicodemus in the Bible. In the day they are with Jesus. At night they are with the Pharisees, you know. So many of them are known that, because many of them invest a lot in this election now, they use this period as a payback time. So they will go to that parliament, and if there are any goodies and low-hanging fruit, they will take. You know?
But I think it goes back to what Ona said earlier. The carrot and stick doesn't end at election time.
Precisely.
It goes to parliament.
Yes.
And especially parliament is vulnerable because one, where there is limited or absence of delivery of services to the constituents, then the MP becomes the ATM of the constituency.
Precisely.
Becomes the ambulance provider for the constituency. And that tilts the power balance because people have got to survive.
And I think for Parliament, the most critical question is going to be the succession issue, because the age limit question is coming right in the middle of this Parliament's term. So if there is going to be a push for amendment of the Constitution to remove age limit, then every MP is going to get caught up in that debate. I'm sure the opposition people would also really have to have a battle on their hands.
Our time is out. We need to be getting out of here.
Just one point I would like to make. Somebody has asked me a very important question. What does this election mean for Museveni and for Besigye? What for Museveni? Huh? You're talking about age limit and all that, but it is going to embolden him. Because there are people who are saying, I think 2021 he may not, but I think it is going to embolden him. Why? Because he has seen that the entire setup works for him. You know, you can actually get a result. Whether the other people have bigger rallies, whether people have, you know, when he started, and he talked about it in his interview, he said, people said that I would not be alive by the end of this year, but I am here. So it is going to embolden him. Now, for if that emboldens him, the nemesis, Dr. Besigye, chances are very high that if he stood up come 2021 and he said, I am challenging this man, chances are high that people will follow him. I think that is one of the significant things about this election.
So you're thinking Besigye shouldn't give up?
It's actually going to continue to be a two-man race.
Yes, I really think, and especially because of what has happened to John Patrick Amama Mbabazi. He came with a lot of promise. He was a man with money. He was a man who knew the NRM in and out. He was the software and the hard drive. He was the engine, they said. He was the engine. He was, but you know, with what has happened, and factoring in all this other business, the rigging and the harassment and what.
He said you concentrate on voting me, I'll take care of the computer.
And you know, because of the...
And the election now, the biggest question is about the computer.
Because of the kind of support Kizza Besigye has gotten, the president, I think, will be smart enough to realize that putting anyone else against him is most likely not going to work.
Precisely.
So it has to be him.
Precisely.
Just
just a quick one.
Very briefly, at the end of the day, the conversation then returns to what the opposition began in before the 2011 election. I had an interview with Dr. Kizabich, and he said before the election they met as leaders of opposition parties and agreed that we cannot go into the 2011 election without a radical reform of the system. Instead of going into the election, we should actually be fighting to reform the system. He failed to gain a critical mass in the opposition to push for that. And they said, possibly we can give it one more try. They went to 2011, back to 2006 and 2001. The same conversation was had with electoral reforms, you remember. 2016, we're back to where we were in 2001. So I think the opposition really needs to put its house in order and decide whether they want to continue the theatrics of this whole movie where Chigun is a director and or whoever else heads the electoral commission. The IGP is almost a chief campaign of the president. The CDF campaigns for the president. And every organ of the state is married with the candidacy of the president.
Should Ugandans leave this question to the politicians in the opposition alone?
It's a question for us all, including religious leaders. The debate is
you
very
see-
good.
you see-
Gentlemen, our time is out.
When you bring in religious leaders, yes, so you see what happened in TDA. This was being pushed by especially civil society. And they had told us that the best option now was John Patrick Amama Mbabazi. Now, just with hindsight, what if Kizza Besigye had not stood and we had Amama Mbabazi? I think we would have had a massacre.
A washout.
No, I don't think so. I don't
For the
think so.
opposition,
Yes.
for the opposition, people, or for all of us, we must know there are only three things that can bring change to Museveni at the moment. And Ona was talking about it. We had a discussion outside. Either force of arms, 2, election, and 3, nature. Now,
To correct you, I said force of arms cannot work.
No, I'm going there. What I'm saying, at the moment, I think the coercive arm, the army force, I don't think you can manage Museveni there at the moment.
But at the risk of extending...
or when it comes to the election, if he's in charge as he is at the moment, I think you are going to bump into...
Gentlemen, I'm afraid our time is out. We need to get out of here.
You have no control.
We have to get out. We have to get out of here, unfortunately.
Very good.
But what is interesting is that results from barracks show the people holding the arms voted against the
No, but you're reading too much into that because soldiers now do not vote within
Yes.
the barracks. They vote outside. Now, if you have 300 soldiers, or say 500 coming out, you have civilians outside who may amount to something like 600,
But
or,
also-
or something like that. So you
No,
have
but
that. mix.
even then, I
It
think,
can't be
gentlemen, I'm
you're reading
afraid.
too much
I'm
into it.
afraid our time is out. I just
But
want
it is significant.
trying
They used to
to.
take for the soldiers then. Now they can't take for
No,
them.
you see, I have covered demonstrations in this town. When policemen and soldiers begin deliberately lobbing tear gas behind where people are living so that they can come on the street, or they go behind and begin beating them coming to the street, you need to watch out very carefully. Our time is out. We need to get out of here. And
That's a good conspiracy theory.
okay, there is something significant about. We just have 1 or 2 minutes to wind up our thoughts. The question of celebration. If you have lost all parliamentary positions in the city, the engines of mobilization are members of parliament. The others are councillors who haven't been voted for yet, and those vying for Lord Mayor and others. So they couldn't mobilize. Yesterday, I was amazed. From the time the announcement was made, the declaration was made, at 3:57, when Dr. Chigundo made the declaration, people only started gathering at 7:06. We came with Timothy Kaligira in front of railway grounds. And for the first time, you expect that borders are the first to arrive for things like this. People were being delivered in taxis. It was quite an amazing thing. It's only Jim Mwezi, who lost in Rukunjiri, who in Rujumbura, who was able to mobilize a large celebration. The celebration in Fort Portal started at 8 p.m., 8:30.
Yeah, but it's because of this. When the day after the election, the military and the police came in town and started arresting and beating up people indiscriminately. Some of them, from what we saw, were saying, I was at my house, there was tear gas, and so that created fear among people. You don't bring your bike, it's your livelihood, and then start riding all over the place. It can be very risky. And then secondly, because of what had happened, because of what had happened, it was also very difficult for anybody to come out. You wouldn't be very sure
Okay,
about what the consequences would be.
let me cut you short, gentlemen. We need, this is a breaking news story. The police has just issued a statement, and this is what they say. In reference to media statements by retired Colonel Dr. Kiza Besigye of plans to hold a procession tomorrow, Monday, 22nd February 2016, from Kasangati to the Electoral Commission head office to purportedly pick up his copy of the Declaration of Results form, the police wish to inform the general public that it has not received any formal communication from him of the intended procession as required under Section 5 of the Public Order Management Act 2013. It is clearly stipulated under Section 4 of the Public Order Management Act that a procession is a public meeting and can only be held in accordance with the said act. On the 8th of December 2015, the government and the opposition agreed on a harmonized interpretation of the Public Order Management Act. Both parties agreed, among others, that the notice of public meeting is mandatory and that the police retains its mandate under the Constitution and other relevant laws to preserve law and order, even when implementing the provisions of the Public Order Management Act. In addition to the above, the planned procession coincides with the opening of new school term, and any procession will infringe on the collective rights of the parents and their school-going children. We therefore urge Dr. Kiza Besigye to respect the law as well as the rights of the parents, their children, and the traveling public. Failure to comply will leave the police with no option but to use necessary means to maintain law and order in accordance with the Constitution. CP Fred Enanga, Press and Public Relations Officer, Uganda Police Force.
Charles, this is exactly what I said, and you said I was living in Mars. I told you we're on the planet Uganda, that you will not be allowed to get out of his home.
Precisely.
So this, we have to, these are
my question has been, for the little time that production has allowed us to extend this show, is it sustainable in light of what we saw? In 2011, President Museveni was declared winner. He swore in, the guests he invited were being pelted with stones. There was chaos.
But how,
yeah,
for how long?
I think the police has since learned that lesson, and that's why they will make it as hard as possible for Dr. Kiza Besigye to do anything similar. And that's why I was saying earlier that it will really take the combined eruption of his P10 across the country for anything to change.
Nick, let me take the question just a little bit. Very many people believe that if President Museveni, like he said today, he's going to respect the Constitution as it is, which now limits him to 75 years. He will hit 75 before his term expires. The question is, during that time is when people do legacy projects, try to clean up what they failed to do, build these all giant projects for what they will be remembered for. Museveni is working very hard to erase Obote's legacy of 26 or 28 hospitals. With, yes, 20, they're 22, they're more 22 actually, they're more than 22. The question is, with the kind of the economy, with concentrating a lot of efforts on containing Dr. Kiza Besigye, where will have the money?
No. First of all, I don't think President Museveni has even talked about that issue. You're making assumptions that he's interested in legacy and all that. What
you know, his people have talked about it.
No, those are his people. His people have told us.
In fact, his own words are that the legacy will take care of itself.
Will take care of itself. So now, what you should look at is the sort of parliament you're going to have.
Yeah.
He has so many people in there. Then there are so many people who are ready to even be bought. You know, that independent group is usually a fluid one. You know, now. So he can have his way when it comes to change.
Thank you very much. Your last word, your last word on this. How does he manage with all this sentiment against him? The numbers have grown significantly, and this means something.
Yes, the question is not what happens to Mbabazi or Besigye. The question is, are Ugandans willing to assert their power as enshrined in the Constitution and the God-given right? Whether they entertain what we've seen since 2001 or since 1986 is really up to them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Our time is out. We need to get out of here. I need to remind our viewers that the police has issued a statement, and the long and short of it is Dr. Kiza Besigye shouldn't attempt to walk with the procession to the Electoral Commission to collect his declaration of results forms. The police says that will be infringing on the rights of other people, and we'll wait to see what happens. obviously we can expect that more deployment will be there.
They will send him a WhatsApp now that social media.
Now that social media is back. We haven't had opportunity to discuss social media, but I think that has been discussed extensively. And in subsequent shows right here on NTV and on other platforms, there will be a discussion about the share of parliament. And of course, we'll be having the elections for local governments and mayors midweek. How does that happen when the Lord Mayor, I don't know if he has been released to go back and continue the campaigning. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you very much, Ona Peter Komoloi. Thank you very much, Nicholas Sengom, and thank you very much, Ivan Okuda.
Thank you.
Thank you very much to you, all our viewers, for joining us tonight, and especially those of you who called us, and each one of you who listened in. I saw the Honorable Captain Mike Mukula tried to call during the show, but we will be talking to try and understand what is actually going on. Have a good night.